I mean, you think about it right now, sitting wherever you are, whoever's watching this, you've made it through every single one of the worst days you've ever had. If you're sitting at this moment watching this or doing whatever it is, you made it to every single thing.
What's up, everybody? Selvin here with another episode of the Black Student Success Podcast, brought to you by Inquire Higher, where we promote and support the success of Black students and professionals through multimedia. Today's guest is a DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner who's been backed by a number of years of experience within certain fields that has brought him into the space. But I want to talk to him about his story, not only about the wealth of experience that he has going into this field, but also the love for his city and kind of how that also supports the work that he does. So, Adam Gabornitz, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, man. It's so good to see you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's start how we always do by asking, who is Adam Gabornitz?
Yeah, who is Adam Gabornitz? It's a great question. And I would say that I am a brother, I am a father, I am a husband, I am a lover of all things Milwaukee. I am an eternal optimist, and I truly believe in the power of bringing people together to do incredibly positive things. And I am really someone who tries to focus the most I can on the positive. And when I think about Milwaukee, when I think about the work I get the privilege of doing every day, there's so much to be grateful for. And I really try to bring that to absolutely everything that I'm doing.
Absolutely. It's a very well encompassed definition of yourself. So let's kind of talk about, what, those experiences have kind of built you into the person that you are. So even starting from maybe when you decided to go to school and kind of how that's progressed into the career that you're in now. And I know that you touch a little bit in tech and maybe even kind of talking about how that has, how that translation to the diversity work that you do.
Yeah, 100%. So I went to University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, so I'm a proud Panther. And I always knew that going to college was going to be something for me. When I originally went to school, what interested me a lot was really the marketing space. I went through school and I ended up graduating with a degree in communications and actually got into sales directly out of college and was doing medical device sales. And I really got an opportunity to see some of the skills that I was able to acquire in college and see how that translated into the real world. I knew I was someone that was always very social. I liked to be out and about and be around people. I was never going to be the guy that sat behind the desk looking at spreadsheets all day. So that was something that was certainly reinforced once I started my career. But I found out really quickly that I wanted to get closer to working with people more so than just in the outside sales space. So I did some work in the workforce development space after that, did a lot of work with folks that were low income, that were looking for career opportunities. So kind of got into the career coaching space, workforce development space as well. I got an opportunity to also work in big staffing for a number of years in the Milwaukee area, which is pretty incredible to sort of learn how that whole big beast works. Got a chance to also do some work working with folks with disabilities and also working in that space of helping people find and maintain employment. Then I got a chance to join Northwestern Mutual a number of years ago and really started in that tech space. And that was everything from entrepreneurial ecosystem building to understand what was happening around the investment space and just making sure that we're building up opportunities in the Milwaukee area, specifically with people in the technology area in that space. And then most recently, I got a chance to transition more into the diversity and inclusion area. And for me, it's always been incredibly important to create opportunities for people, for all people. I'd never formally worked in the D&I space. So it was a great chance to say, okay, here's how I think it should be. Here's what I think I can bring to that type of role. Okay, here's your shot. Go ahead and make it happen. And I've gotten a chance to work in the diversity and inclusion space for the last 3 years. And it hasn't been a straight line. As I kind of alluded to, I've gone in a lot of different directions. The consistent through, though, has always been about people, empowering people, supporting people to achieve their highest potential, and then ultimately how that impacts all of us to achieve everything that we're looking for.
Yeah, you really pointed out that foundation of just kind of working with people and then already having the opportunity to work with different kinds of people, in the different spaces that you were. And then I think the bigger thing is that you've been able to connect that to the greater community, so,
Yeah.
okay, I'm helping these individuals, but, how is that help then kind of, going out to either the greater Milwaukee area, whether it's, the greater community of the company itself. So you've had more of that context to apply some of those things to not only help the people, but also just in that greater scheme of, just that environment that you're in. You've done that, it seems like, for each one of those environments too.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it's been. And that was something that I knew pretty early on in my life. I was always somebody that was social. I was always someone that got a lot of energy from being around people, wanted to connect with other people, and wanted to always be helpful, to be of service. And to be able to have this opportunity to work in a variety of different professions, but all of them to be able to have that at least a part of, if not the core of the work that I'm doing, I'm incredibly grateful that I've had the chance to do that.
Yeah, that's what's up. So now, given the fact that you've had the opportunity to work with different kinds of people, different spaces, seems like, a variety of industries as well. What are some of those skills maybe that you've either picked up or felt like that you've naturally had to, make you successful when it comes to connecting with people and then, providing those resources to make them the best selves that they can be?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the big things that I think about with that is always on the ability to be adaptable, to be able to move in a lot of different scenarios and to be able to adjust up or down. People might call that emotional intelligence if you want to, but the ability to build relationships and make connections with different types of people in different types of environments is incredibly beneficial. Not only do you get to learn a bunch of new things and have incredibly different experiences, but it also makes it really easy for people to work with you. And I think about for people that are starting their careers in whatever field it is, make it easy and make people want to be excited to spend time with you. So I think being able to work in a lot of different environments and really have an adaptability is incredibly important. The second thing is the ability to have a really strong self-confidence. And sometimes that self-confidence is something that's built over time and experiences, but that self-confidence and that belief in yourself is incredibly beneficial. Sometimes it's a lot harder than others, but I've always been someone that's had a pretty good amount of self-confidence. And then you add that along with now 17 years plus of work experience, you're able to say, okay, I have the confidence, also the experience, and also the skill set. So being able to cultivate a feeling of really self-confidence. And then also the big thing is the idea of service, the idea of giving, the idea of leaving things better than you found it. If you're able to walk into situations and say, how can I help? How can I be of service? That's going to lead you in a lot of different directions. Not only are you going to be helpful and be valuable to others, but you'll then get an opportunity to receive as well. So those are probably three of the things that have stuck with me and things that have either been something that I focused on really early or something that I certainly made sure that I developed if I already had a little bit inherently.
Yeah, yeah, I like the adaptability because, especially in a world that's ever changing, regardless of the industry that you're in, to be able to attach onto some of those upcoming changes and be able to either identify that there's some things that will be beneficial for me to really roll with these changes, and then if there's some that have maybe a little bit of a hesitation, then you have hopefully the time to kind of start prepping for those, or reaching out to colleagues who may have an easier time to kind of ease with some of those changes, and then continue to evolve that way. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things that kind of goes across any industry, but it sounds like definitely within that work at diversity.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It does go across any industry, but certainly in the space of diversity and inclusion, it becomes incredibly important to do all of those things. And I think about it a little bit more. And as you were talking, I'd add one more thing to it, and it's empathy. Being able to put yourself in other people's shoes, whether it be big monumental things or small things, the ability to have and view things from other perspectives allows you to really have a lot of empathy. A lot of empathy, I believe, is an incredibly important thing, whether you're working on a big project or being part of a new team. And that other piece of it as well has certainly served me very well in the space of diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, being able to connect, and I think even if you're don't have the most relatability to any of those people that you're working with, it also serves as a good learning opportunity, and things that you can then pick up to be able to apply to any of those future opportunities that will allow you to mesh a little bit better with some of those changes. So I'm glad that that was a piece that you identified. Now, when it comes to working with other different kinds of people, and then especially knowing that the diversity, as far as the work that you do, goes across all different types of groups, or just ways that people identify with each other. For those who may have, especially within our community, really making a push to, advance the opportunities for either Black employees or just the Black community in general. I know that there might be a little bit more effort to find a balance between that. And maybe it's something that you do within work or outside of work, but, to be in this position to have to advocate for all people, but then also maybe have a little bit more of an affinity towards any other group, whether it's the Black community or any other type of community. How do you balance all that as you're trying to develop as this practitioner to really make sure that the environment is good for everybody, but then also still being true to maybe some of those natural inclinations to specific groups of people?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal question. And I would say when I think about the work, I'll answer from the work perspective, and then I'll zoom out a little bit and answer from a personal perspective, I guess, which it's all kind of connected anyway. But from a work perspective, it's very simple. Diversity and inclusion work is not about me. It is a job and it is a role of service in service of others. So that's philosophically how I carry myself every day with my job. And when I got into it, it was always about, oh man, I think I've got some ideas that would ultimately benefit people. I'd love to take this opportunity and see what I can do. So it's very easy to say I need to serve different populations at different times, depending on what we're focused on. If my philosophy is I am about service, it's about creating opportunities within this organization for others. So it's actually not very hard for me. And I also recognize that through this work, it's incredibly important to look to do for all. But in order to create equity, in order to create opportunity for everyone, that means things may have to ramp up or ramp down a little bit. It's a really easy thing for me to conceptualize. So I can go into the work knowing I got this. I'm good. I think what becomes more interesting is the second part of that, when you talk a little bit about things from a personal perspective. So I was born in Honduras and I was adopted. So I've got this interesting dynamic of being a Black man, but also having the Central American, Hispanic side of me as well. And it isn't a side of me, it's all of me. So I move through the world, I guess, as Afro-Latino, if you want to define that or put in whatever names you want to. But to me, I've always loved the idea of difference, love the idea of diversity, love the idea of all the incredible things that we bring to the table in the multitudes of different ways that we choose to show up or identify ourselves or don't identify ourselves. So the fact that I move through the world representative of different communities, I feel like I don't have a choice but to be thinking about a lot of different types of people. So it's kind of a cool thing because I feel like it's really easy to do in the work. As I've gotten older and hopefully a little bit wiser, I think it's become even easier to do it as an individual human being. But again, to me, it's something I have a service mentality. So the empathy, I talked about before, is sort of a default for me. And ideally, that's how I'm showing up. And ideally, that's what people are feeling from me.
There you go. And I like the foundation of that service, kind of really driving some of those things that you do and the philosophies that you have. And to piggyback on that, for someone who might have that duality as far as their not environment, but their identity, and maybe they're still trying to kind of figure some of those things out, and maybe they want to kind of get into a space where they are serving all people. What advice would you have for them if they are struggling with trying to figure out that balance? Maybe it doesn't come as naturally for them to really latch onto those different identities and then use that as their lens to kind of help people. So if you were to provide any piece of advice for someone who may have that similar identity situation, what would you say to them?
It's a great question. And my answer is going to be simple, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. Know yourself. So many of our stories about our lives, about our identities, about what college we should go to, what career we should have, stem from somebody else's influence. Parents, siblings, friends, community, whatever it is. So much of what we go through in our lives is the result of expectations that we may be putting on ourselves, that may be imposed by others, whatever it may be. So when you start thinking about identity, identity is very personal. While it's also connected to perhaps a bigger group. We talked about being Black, being brown, Afro Latino, whatever it is. But this idea that you need to define yourself in a certain way, the idea that you need to define yourself at all, is very much a societal and social construct. So the better you get to know and understand yourself and who you are, the stories that are truly yours and not necessarily somebody else's, then it starts to become very clear pretty quickly who you are and how you want to choose to identify yourself. So for me, it's really always been about me and going deeper, understanding the things that I value, how I want to show up in the world. And then from there, it's very easy how I want to identify, how I want to show up in certain situations. But it takes time. Again, being an adopted kid, there's part of the uncertainty of what my birth parents were like, because I don't really know much. So it can be one of those things where it may take a long time for some people, but the more you know yourself, the confidence you're able to build up in who you are, then it becomes much easier to figure out how you want to identify, or even making the choice of not to, and you being good with that either way.
Perfect, perfect. And I think to add to that, I think it's also good to give yourself some grace and give yourself that time to try to figure yourself out,
Yes.
because it's not something that happens instantly. I don't think it's ever happened instantly for anybody.
Uh-huh.
But like you said, for some it may take a shorter time than others, but to give yourself that time and that grace so that you're not beating
Yes.
yourself for not having it all figured out by the age of 18 or by the
Yeah.
time you graduate from college, or because a lot of us have still figuring it out now, there's things that you might not come across just from out of lack of experience that might then kind of bring some new perspectives as well. So it's a never changing thing. But I would say, just to add to your point, to make sure that you're not beating yourself up, for not having certain things achieved, or just that awareness, at a certain time. I think it's always going to be different for everybody.
100% right. There is no expiration date on experiences, on growth, and really on evolution. So there is whatever time constraints we're putting on ourselves, they're not real. They don't have to be.
There you go. There you go. Now, with all the other things that you have done, what are some of the things that you do to pay it forward? Outside of the work that you do, through most of the week, what are some of those maybe initiatives, or maybe even just philosophies in general, that you have to make sure that you are putting it back to those who are coming behind you?
Yeah. So it's a great question, and it's something that I've always found to be very, very important, is the ability to pay it forward, to make sure that people are having access to things that maybe I didn't have access to, whatever it may be. So a lot of that has to do with the communities that I surround myself with, the organizations that I surround myself with, that are naturally built to be doing some of those things. So there have been a handful of different places that I've had a chance to participate in things with over the course of my career. Boys and Girls Club has always been one of my favorites. I've gotten a chance to do some stuff with them over the course of my career. There's a really great organization. It actually started out of Chicagoland area, but it's in Milwaukee area right now. It's called I See Stars. What they really do is they focus on helping people with all sorts of different diverse backgrounds get into the areas of technology. So I always like to spend time doing things like that. Have also connected with a bunch of incredible nonprofits in the city of Milwaukee as well, doing different things, all though focused on the wildly diverse populations that are in this incredible city, as well as just focusing on the idea of supporting and uplifting all different parts of the community. But it's something that I've always done, and it's either something I've naturally fallen into, or I've even had the luxury of doing a little bit of that even during my day job. But it's always something that's on my mind, man, is how is what I'm doing today benefiting the future? And especially being a father and having children of my own, it becomes even more important that I am doing things that are making it easier and creating more opportunities for the next generation that's coming up.
Dope answer. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Now finally, just to kind of wrap things up, let's get to know a little bit more about you.
Yep.
What would you say is a rite of passage that all students have to go through? There are certain things that we, experience, while we're in school that, either make or break us as a student, or kind of, set the foundation for kind of how things are going to move afterwards. But what would you say is like one rite of passage, from freshman to senior year that, all students have to kind of get their licks with?
Yeah, that's a good question. Oh man. And I'm gonna keep it kind of more school related too. I won't go off the deep end with some other
Yeah.
experiences.
Uh-huh.
Maybe good or bad, dependent. But I would say the first time you experience true adversity. And for me, I moved out, as soon as I graduated from high school, it was okay going to college, and moved out right away. And the first time you experience adversity when you are on your own, differently than maybe when you were living with your parents, or whatever your living situation was prior to that, I think is incredibly important. And that adversity can come in many different forms. Maybe you didn't get the grade that you wanted to get. Maybe the job that you were looking to get, somebody else got it, kind of thing. And that was really important because you needed that thing there. Relationships changing, whether it be with significant others, whether it be with friendships, because those things can change a great deal when you're going to college or whatever it is. You might lose some people or whatever it is. But I would say the biggest thing is that time that you experience some newer, different adversity than you'd experienced in the past. And when it becomes something that you really have to overcome on your own. And I don't put a lot of stock in it having to be a specific type of adversity, but a new, unique challenge, bit of adversity that you have to overcome and use skills or thoughts or whatever it is that you hadn't used before, and you're able to come through that on the other side. Man, that is incredibly beneficial, not only in the moment, but also in life. Because one thing that I've learned is that the times you experience your challenges, you learn and gain so much more from those than the times when things are easy and when you're winning. So as you go through college, and the moments, the times you have some adversities when things don't go your way, and the fact that you're able to push through that, that'll teach you so much about life, man. So much.
Absolutely. It's funny when you do run into those things, and in the midst of it, you're like, this is the worst thing ever.
Yep.
And you're just like, how am I going to get out of this? And it's all you can think about. And then maybe, 2-3 weeks, months later, you kind of reflect on it and you realize that you're still here.
Yep.
You say, okay, I can make it through. If I made it through that, when I thought that this was basically the end, then I can make it through a lot of other things. I think that, to help build off of those types of experiences, what helps you kind of move forward too.
100%. I mean, you think about it right now, sitting wherever you are, whoever's watching this, you've made it through every single one of the worst days you've ever had. If you're sitting at this moment watching this or doing whatever it is, you made it through every single thing. And you can do that. And through experiences comes knowledge. The knowledge and the application of that becomes wisdom. And I truly, truly believe that through time, it also gives you the ability to have some perspective. And yes, in that moment, it might be incredibly hard. It might be incredibly terrible. I'm not taking anything away from that. But you zoom out from that, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 17 years later, when you're still there and you're still doing your thing, it'll be just fine. It truly will.
Perfect way to end that. I really do appreciate your time and perspective, Adam. This has been great, and we'll definitely we'll definitely have more ways to connect to you and all of that. So again, appreciate your time and appreciate everybody who's been watching and listening. Be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Apple, Spotify, all your major streaming services. Check out our website, inquirehigher.com. We got a lot of great information there. And if you want to reach out to us, contact at Inquire Higher is the best way, or you can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. So until next time, take care.